an email from the three candidates not attending. And then I'll go ahead and I told them I would read this statement. And the and this is from Sandra Vaughan, candidate for City Council, Ahmet Tassi, candidate for City Council, Dina Marlott, county candidate for City Treasurer. The three candidates for election to the Dunsmuir the City Council and City Treasurer offices listed above hereby inform both the Chamber Forum and the public that they must regretfully decline invitation to a Zoom candidates forum whose details were issued at the last minute with no previous discussion or agreement among the candidates. This is just not fair or appropriate under these circumstances. The fact that we were informed of this forum's format with only 6 days notice and that it was to be moderated by an individual who is an announced backer of all our three opponents was not acceptable. Further, there was no previous discussion with all candidates as to the format, moderator, and subject matter. This lack of transparency is not fair or appropriate under these circumstances. In the alternative, the candidates listed above will organize a Zoom candidates forum on Sunday, November 1st, 2020, or another date, excuse me, agreed upon by all candidates, and hereby invite the three candidates for office, Bruce Deutsch, Dave Keisler, and Marlo Rubino to attend. This will give all candidates a chance to discuss and agree upon the format, subject matter, and moderator of the candidate forum. All right, so that is the conclusion of their statements. I would like to respond to just a couple of things. One is the format for this forum is the format that was adopted by the chamber 7-8 years ago when they first did it, and has been used for all of the forums that we've held, and that's that the candidates get their talk, the questions are submitted, vetted by a committee that is from the chamber, and yeah, so it was something that the format was developed a long time. The only thing under the change this year was it had to be a Zoom meeting because we were unable to secure a facility large enough to provide social distancing in the COVID times. And then, so that's the way that the format and all that stuff has been developed, same one used for years. And then in terms of the last minute, the candidates received a doodle poll requesting dates for the forum in late September. 2 candidates responded to that, and I personally ran down the other candidates and got a date that was acceptable to everybody, they agreed upon. And then on the 5th of October, I mailed out to all of the candidates the guidelines of the format and requesting input from them on the format. So that's it. And unfortunately, one of the candidates' email bounced back, and I did not notice that until the second email that I sent to them. It bounced back, and I saw it and called that person, left a message. Anyway, that's the end of my little presentation. I want to thank people for tuning in, participating in the forum, and I hope the discussion is civil to the issues and informative. And thank you, Mark, for hosting this, and thank the candidates for showing up. So I'm done.
All right, thank you. Bruce, I noticed that you had your hand up. Would you like to make a comment?
Yes, please. I just wanted to respond to the email that he just read. For the years, this has been a process where we get together, we sit down, questions are asked, and we answer it for the public. That's the way these forums have been going on. The idea that there is something special about this, just because we have to do it by Zoom, is preposterous. And the whole idea is, I believe, that if you want to be able to run for city council, you ought to be able to sit down with the people and answer any questions anytime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and begin with these questions. So we have a set of questions for city council persons seeking membership, and then we also have for the treasurer. And so what I'll do in the name of fairness is I'm going to probably go for about a half of it with the city council, then I'm going to switch to treasurer, I think. And then, because I don't want to weigh one over or lesser than the other. So I'll just kind of invent this format as we go along, trying to be as fair and equitable as I can for everyone. So with that in mind, let's see, we have Big Dave here and we have Bruce. So I will start with the two of you and you can take turns, and Big Dave, I'll have you go first. What do you see as the three biggest issues facing Dunsmuir? Which do you want to focus on and how would you address them? And I'll get you unmuted here. Okay, Big Dave, you're ready to go.
Well, first of all, are we doing introductions?
That's probably a wonderful idea. Why don't you introduce yourself, take a moment and say a little bit about yourself, please. Yes.
Well, everybody knows me as Big Dave. And I'm running for council again because I see this council as one of the best councils has been working together, anyone that I've served on, and better than some that were before me. I wore this pink shirt on purpose because I support breast cancer awareness, and I have this pen that was given to me by the Rotarian governor for 1,000 hours of community service in the city of Dunsmuir. I love this city. I care about this city. I think I've proven that. I've been on council for 8 years. I'm looking for another term. I'm looking to be part of the council that's going to move us into a brighter future. And I believe in this council. And I've been everything from Citizen of the Year to Santa Claus to the Easter Bunny. I read to the kids. I put the Christmas decorations up throughout Christmas. I put the flags up I did a cemetery rehab, and we have a veterans memorial now. I really love this city, and part of you asked me the three things. One of the things that concerns me is the police, and that has a lot to do with this measure that's on the ballot. Police security for the town. I believe in supporting the businesses as we go through this COVID tragedy. And we need to find a way to support tourism. That's how the town survives. I like the idea of the sidewalk things. I think they're great. The little picnic areas on the sidewalks and dinners and having the streets blocked off with music. We used to do that in the old days, from what I hear. But we need to be supportive of that. We need to find bigger and better ways. And well, that's about all I got to say right now. I'm looking forward to some questions.
Thank you. All right, great. And Bruce, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself? And let me repeat those questions. What do you see as the three biggest issues facing Dunsmuir? Which do you want to focus on and how would you address them? So go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you. My name is Bruce Deutsch. I moved here in 2008, was appointed to the council in June of 2015, ran for re-election in 16, and I'm looking for another term. In terms of my background, I grew up in the Midwest. I went to a high school with a graduating class of 65 amongst the various small farm towns. I was able to get a Navy Reserve Officer Training Corps scholarship to the University of Notre Dame, where I got a BA in government. I spent 6 years on active duty and 16 in the reserves. Twice in that career, I was able to manage extraordinary digital transformations. And later, I spent time with Fortune 500 companies, translating them over to the web at the time, at the turn of the century. Spent 6 years teaching high school, and then had a heart attack and decided I needed to get to a quieter, more comfortable way of life, and found Dunsmuir. And I've been blessed to live here. And I find myself, as I'm retired and have an income that I don't have to work, I find myself spending most of my time, my free time, serving the community in one way or another. Besides being on the council, I'm the president of the board of directors of the College of the Siskiyous Foundation, where we raise money for scholarships for kids in Dunsmuir. I'm the president of the board of directors of the Siskiyou Community Resource Collaborative, which runs the various resource centers throughout the county. And I'm particularly supportive of our local community resource center with Stephen and Judy and everybody else in there. What I'm looking forward to in terms of this next term, the three areas that I'd like to focus on is number one, we really do need to find another source of revenue besides tourism. We used to have the railroads, and we had the mills, and we had a bustling city. We were the largest city. We were larger than Wairika, Mount Shasta, and even Redding at one time. And the point is that relying only on tourism is no way to continue to grow, and it allows us to fall into traps like the fires of 2018 or the COVID of this year. So what I've been working on is trying to find a way to make this a place where people can come and live and take advantage of gigabits and the internet and broadband and find a home here. So that's what I've been working on. And one of the key areas I was working on there was the airport. We've recently been granted $3.2 million to completely rehab the runway and the taxiways at the airport. I see that as a way to bring in small tech companies and individuals who have enough money to have a plane and have the ability to fly back and forth to Sacramento, San Francisco, Portland. We even talked at one point about getting a charter service in so people could come and fly to Portland or San Francisco. The second area I think is really important is housing. And as part of that, there's the whole situation with Airbnb, short-term rentals. That's a really hard problem. Cities all across the country that have a reason to be a tourist destination are having problems with that. And so I'm glad that we're looking at it. I was able to make sure that we automatically got paid all the TOT taxes from the individuals renting here in Dunsmuir and Airbnbs, and have it automatically forwarded to the city as revenue. So we're able to bring in about $100,000 a year now in TOT taxes that we weren't able to do before. The last thing is the police department. When we talk about Measure H, the key thing to remember about Measure H is that we would have, if we thought it would pass, have done this as a special tax. We talked a lot about the idea of making this a tax that 2/3 of the people would vote for, and then we would be able to donate dedicate all that money to both police and fire abatement. Unfortunately, we know that no taxes in Dunsmuir have ever been passed by a 2/3 majority, at least in the recent history. So we decided that we had to go as a general tax. But here's the idea. This is about the police force. If we have to cut in 2 years, we're going to have to cut significantly into our patrol hours. And so that measure is really all about continuing to grow and continuing to be able to support our police. Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you. So Mario, I think that I've unmuted you. Would you like to say a little bit about yourself? And the first question for you is, what exactly does the treasurer do?
I was dying to know if I was going to have to answer or not. My name is Marlo Rubino. 10 years or so ago, I sat on council for a couple of years. And that was my first experience with looking at financial statements. I was on the finance committee at that time. Sometime 7 years ago, I guess, Mabel Kelby, the city's treasurer at the time, came up to me and asked me if I would consider being a treasurer. And of course, I told her I wasn't really that knowledgeable about the municipal finances, though I had a great interest. And we talked about it at length, and she finally convinced me to do it. I put my name in and I was appointed by the council. Since then, after 2 years, I went up for election and won it. 4 years ago, I won election to the position. I'm not sure what it is, but I love big picture finances. I like finances. I like looking at numbers. It's sometimes can be overwhelming to look at the details of the city's finances. Most citizens, when you pop the numbers off and let them know, they really don't want to hear it. They gloss over. But what the job is, oddly enough, it is not a policy job. What that would mean is I don't make decisions specifically for the city. What the job is the city has revenues. Those revenues are put in to the treasury. And as a treasurer, I'm responsible for all that money in the bank, the treasury. Now, because we're a city manager / council form of government, in much the same way, the financial manager handles the day-to-day accounting for the amount of money that's in the account and the amount of money that's invoiced against the city and the city paying those things. So like a city council member, I oversee the process and follow the process so that I can explain it to the citizens, as well as keep tabs on the going-ons of the business of the city. It's an interesting job. I love it. I get to have a conversation at least once a week with the city manager. The conversations are often about items like solid waste. O&M isn't making enough money, and we need to get council's attention to deal with that as an issue. The other is last January, I spotted that our solid waste, not solid waste, I'm sorry, the sewer fund 218 we were passing wasn't achieving the revenues that it was supposed to. And I had talked both in front of council and continually with the city manager and the financial manager to get some resolve on this issue. We're finally getting close to a resolve on this issue, but it's a serious issue. And where I interface with the public is sometime in July, I discussed the fact that council needs to deal with what I feel are two critical things. One is a potential increase in solid waste if we don't get a contract signed with the hauler and we can't agree on what it is we're going to do about green waste and recycling. The other item is we passed a 218 on the sewer and it is underperforming, and there may be another requirement that we go in front of the people to do something about that 218. And so it's something I consider very serious before passing taxes to the public. I think we need to look at these issues and clear the table. The citizens have a right to know what to expect, and this before passing the tax. Are we on a time limit, or?
Yeah, you're on a 3-minute time limit.
We're okay?
You're okay. You got about a minute.
Okay. So the final issues is little things like we have quarterly reports of data and numbers. I noticed that several of the utilities were overspending their budget. We talk about it, me and the financial manager, and see if it's required that city council is informed and we make a budget amendment. And if a citizen has a question about any expenses or any invoices, I am able to go into the office and ask to gather that information and get it back to them. I don't have to, but I spend a lot of time signing checks as I sign those checks, I look for who the invoicee is, which fund that they're taking the money out of. I look for anomalies, and then I usually pick one in the batch of 30 to look through and see if I know and understand where this money's going to and why. And that gives me a familiarization with the whole process and who we are paying and why we pay them money. And there's some odd bills that come through. And so it's always good to know that there's a reasonable reason for it. The biggest part of being the treasurer is the opportunity to look and participate in budget making. And the other one is to look and participate in the audit. The audit is critical. The audit is a one-time snapshot of all the money that's in the treasury on June 30th. And for that, we get an exact accounting of where every dollar is and where every dollar was spent went. And that is probably the most critical thing. And the audit is sadly only 25 pages long, but the opportunity to have in-depth discussions with the auditor and have council have in-depth discussions with the auditor garners the city a lot of information about where it is and where it needs to move forward. So that should be about enough time, huh?
Okay, all right, great. So what I'll do now is I'll move on for a second city council question, and this one is going to be for Big Dave. What more can the city be doing for its citizens concerning COVID-19? And that question is for you, Big Dave.
I think we made a resolution that suggesting that everybody mask up and maintain your 6 feet distance. The elementary, I think, is still closed. The high school opened up. I see everybody wearing masks. This is something like I've never seen in my lifetime, and I don't really know how to deal with it. I know that I mask up when I go into Chevron. You can't enforce, we can't tell people to do anything. We can only suggest. And that's what we've done as council, is we suggested that everybody do that. Follow the doctor's
Oh, I think we may have lost you.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Would you like to finish up? Yeah, I think you disappeared there for a moment.
Like I said, we can't make anybody wear masks, but we do suggest, as council, we suggest that you wear masks, maintain your social distance, wash your hands, and follow the guidelines.
Okay, thank you. And Bruce, how would you like to respond to that same question? What more can the city be doing for its citizens concerning COVID-19?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to reiterate what Dave said, and that is that as a council, we looked at this, and our lawyers basically told us that if we were to put in an enforceable law, we would be responsible for coming up with the people able to actually enforce it. And that would have provided with us all kinds of other liabilities. The bottom line is that what the city has been able to do, and this is really largely on the credit of Todd Uhas, our city manager, is he was able to work with each of the different restaurants around the area and provide them with the tools they needed to be able to create that space outdoors where they could safely serve customers. And unfortunately, now we're moving into a new realm where that's going to have to be relooked at because of the cold and the snow and et cetera. So on one hand, I think that the city council is kind of limited in what it can do, since its job is to make policies. Where I get a chance to really make a difference there is with the Dunsmuir Community Care Team. This was a team that was created a couple of years ago. Stephen Bryan, who's the head of the Dunsmuir Community Resource Center has done a fabulous job of keeping that alive. We used to meet once a month and just talk about what's going on in the city, what can we do to help the people, or what particular needs are there, like food, or during the beginning of the COVID crisis, how do we get food to the people? And once we did that, I asked Steve to make that a weekly meeting. And so for a good several months here, we've been meeting on a weekly basis. We've really recently reduced that to bi-weekly. But the point is, we bring together all the various people in the community that can make a difference. The sheriffs, superintendent and principals of both schools, the head of the disaster preparedness committee, all of these different people meet on a Zoom every 2 weeks now to see what we can do to help the people, to help them get through. I highly, highly encourage everyone to wear a mask. It's really the only way we're going to get through this without any loss of life. And on the other hand, we're going to have to look now and figure out how it is we're going to deal with this new situation with trying to get the restaurants back indoors or some way safe into the winter. So that's my response to that. There are limitations the council can do, but in terms of other things that we can do and reach out to, that's, I think, the key right now to help keep our community safe and flourishing. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now we'll have a second question for the treasurer position, and so this is for you, Mario. Do you support the program of utility rate increases designed to fix our water delivery system? And if not, what is your plan for getting our aging water system fixed?
Okay, again, the treasurer's concerns are not policy. And so there are slight elements that interface with this, but this is a city councilman's position and it is his authority to be aware of it. I will say this, I have sat on rate hike committees and my council was Peter Art, myself, and quite a few others. We're the ones to put through the first set of water rate and sewer rate hikes. The city's infrastructure is in bad shape and the city had allowed itself to get past the point where fixing and repairing no longer was an option. We actually had to do a lot of things. But again, as a treasurer, I'm concerned about the monies and the city's finances. I'm not so much concerned about actual infrastructure.
Okay, very good. All right, we will return back with another question for the city council. And this will be, we'll start off again with Big Dave. And Big Dave, the question is what are your thoughts on vacation rentals? How do we balance the need for long-term housing with vacation rentals? And can we control vacation rentals?
Interesting question. I happened to sit in on the planning commission meeting the other night, and that was discussed at length. And right now we get money from Airbnb. They send the money straight to City Hall. We've got this program set up with them. The one thing that I was thinking about in my opening statement when you asked me what were the three things, housing is a big issue. I'm at the point where it was like a 50-50, I think. You can't tell them what they can do with their property. We can encourage them to keep them rentals and for local people. You know, that's my theory. I'm hoping that we can find a some kind of low income grant for some housing. That's what we need. As far as the city telling property owners what they can do with their property, that's kind of a fine line for council. Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, Bruce, I will pose that same question to you. What are your thoughts on vacation rentals? How do we balance the need for long-term housing with vacation rentals? And can we control vacation rentals?
Mark, I have a question for you. Do you mind if I go back
Yes.
just a second? Am I going to have an opportunity to talk about water rates and things like that later? Because I would like to put a point in on that if possible.
Okay, we'll go back to it and I'll make a note of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so in terms of how short-term rentals, it's a challenge, as I said before, that is faced by cities all across the country, anywhere where people want to go and hang out, be a tourist and vacation. So it's a serious problem. And I know that right now the Planning Commission is looking at that. And the way the government works in our system of government here with the city council and manager is that the Planning Commission is where the research is done, where the input is taken from the people, where they bring together the city planner and the city manager, and they all work together as a team to come up with a set of recommendations. Those recommendations in turn then are brought before the council. So in terms of what we're going to come up with, I'm looking forward to finding out what those experts recommend. And then when it comes to the council, we'll talk about that. I think that one of the key items here, though, is to recognize there's another half to this problem. We talk about the Airbnbs, but the problem is that we've also had a history of bad renters, people that trash the place afterwards, people that put in meth labs into rental homes. And I think that one of the ways we might be able to get around this is to develop some sort of way of green lighting good renters, so that people right now that are choosing between an Airbnb and a long-term rental for a local citizen would be able to rent to somebody and do so in a way that they could be safe and knowing that person is not going to trash the place. I think that's one of the ways we can find some creative way of opening up more rentals. But I think the long term is we're going to have to really grow the city. We need to come up with a whole new level of housing. And for me, that is north of Dunsmuir, between the airport and the northern part, let's say Siskiyou exit, that whole area on the east side of the interstate is an area that I think is going to be where we're going to be growing. And I'm looking forward to doing that. We have a sliver of the city that runs up along the interstate so that we can connect the city with the airport. And with that in mind, I do believe that that's where we're going to grow. That's the long term. The short term is finding a solution through the Planning Commission that everyone's comfortable with. And then at the other hand, I do want to explore how to find a way to be able to rent locally with people being confident they're not going to have their place destroyed. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll move to another treasurer question, and this is for you, Mario. What is your stance on Measure H and why?
Like Mr. Deutsch, I would like to go back to the question he was about the short-term rentals. But for now, let's answer this question. I don't appreciate how council handled H. My biggest issue from the get-go, and July 6th, I published in the paper, and before that, I published in the paper as well. Council needs to look at the failure of the sewer 218, and also look at what we're going to do as far as solid waste, getting a contract signed with our garbage collector and dealing with these issues around green waste and recycling. Now, council, myself, when we first started the financial committee, we started discussing the needs and the finances of the city. We all acknowledged that in 2 years, that contract with the sheriff, which is personally very important to me. I greatly appreciate the work the sheriffs have done. I have worked with the sheriffs and they have been more than willing to see the requirements of the city of Dunsmuir be fulfilled. I would like them to be way more than 17.5 hours. And quite frankly, I know that they're producing more than 17.5 hours, as well as we're paying a charge for overtime. It hasn't been a great sum, but it's an unaccounted for sum, which makes it hard to budget against. And so, yes, we do need the money. All the many factors that mitigate in to this issue, things like what council would like to support in the community and how it would like to support, are kind of a separate topic to me. The sheriff's contract, the fact that we pay for fire, we have just hired a fire chief, we have just hired a community services officer. Both of them were unbudgeted. You know, I felt that we should approach the tax and tell the citizens of Dunsmuir, let's do a 2/3 tax. It's just for fire and safety. And that's all the money will be used for. I would have been out there door to door talking to people and trying to pass that tax. Instead, what happened is the councilman went down to the League of Cities, heard that it's easier to pass a 1.5 tax than a 0.5 tax, and decided that we could do a whole shopping list of things with the money if we just passed a TUT, a transaction and use tax. That transaction and use tax is a huge sum of money. There was no conversations with the people in the community. I went out and made several. That money is collected by our city's businesses. It was a usurious tax to put on the city of Dunsmuir merchants because it was way higher than anywhere else in the county and unsubstantiated anywhere but in a major metropolitan area. So I've been against the tax. I've been against the way councils approach the tax. I've been amazed at their lack of follow through. I've been amazed that they went on a survey that only had 100 response, and they were going to make the decision about how that tax money was spent from that survey 100%. And we all know these taxes are passed under a 218 process. And that means you need the citizens to sign off that this money is important to them. And so you can't start with the survey that doesn't include 50% of the community plus one. And it should have been at least 400 respondents if you wanted to see that thing pass. They didn't have it. They didn't attempt it. I've had conversations with the city manager about the lack of follow through, the lack of solicitation on this. And so I came against it, not because we needed it, but how that it was done. The citizens deserve to know.
Okay, thank you. And I guess we'll just segue right into that, and we'll go with Big Dave. And the question for you is, what is your position on Measure H and why?
I'm with the other guys. I'd like to talk about the sewer pipes but like Mario did, I'll answer this question too. Take it right here. I would have to concur with Mario. I don't like the way it was brought to me, but that's what council together, we thought that was what was going to work. Fact. Without this, we will have less than half of the police force that we have now. I like living in a safe community. I like the fact if I call the sheriffs, they come pretty much most of the time. Without this, we will lose half of our police force. That is a fact. It's not up for debate. The hardest thing that I had to do on this council since I've been on council was the reduction of hours in dealing in negotiations with the sheriff in the contract that we just went through. We're looking all right now. We're reducing the hours, but when the contract comes up, we will be at half, less than half of what we have now. So that's That's why I'm for Dunsmuir. To me is like a car. It's going down a road and we got to put some gas in that car. I know some people that are trying to get on council that want to run that car to the ground till the tires fall off and put blue tape on the license plate to get by. This, I believe in this measure. I believe the city needs it. The safety is my concern, my utmost concern. So there you have it in a nutshell.
All right, thank you very much. And Bruce, we'll go with the same question for you. Is what is your position on Measure H and why?
When I think of what I would want to have as a healthy government, city government, looking after my finances and looking after the health and safety of the city, I would want to make sure that the people have taken the time to look at all the different information. They've made sure that they've identified things in the future that are going to cost us money. They have looked at all the options and they have made everything and all their discussions, whether in public finance committee meetings every couple of weeks, it seems, or in city council meetings twice a month. All those city council meetings where we discussed the tax and why we put it on and all of that was in public, transparent. We all five sat and talked about it. And all five of us realized that in 2 years, we're going to get hit with another police contract increase. That's not something that we can control. We can look at other ways of doing it. If we wanted to cover, we could delete and not fund any of the community development programs that we have. When you talk about supporting the library or the pool, that comes out of a general fund. And out of that general fund, we have to find ways of not only supporting those kind of programs, but also paying for the police. So in 2 years, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get another increase in police. And right now, your choice when you look at Measure H on the ballot is simple. Do you want to pay for that extra police? When you look at the amount of money we're talking about, I know I'm on a limited budget, not maybe as stressed as other folks, but at the same time, when you look at 1.5 cents on a dollar, you'd have to, if you spent $100 at Dollar General, you'd pay an extra $1.50 in taxes. So the whole idea here is that what we're looking at is the council determined, and you can go back and look at the budget, you can look at the meeting where it was discussed. And I think you'll find that we realized that we had to make the tough decision. I'm running for council. I'd love to be able to say I won't raise taxes, but I also am running because I believe that I am responsible and that I'm looking out for the future of the city. So in my mind, whether you talk about why we didn't do this or why it wasn't done like this, we were hit by COVID in the middle of this all. We could have done a lot of different things leading up to it if we had the ability, but we were having struggles just meeting and taking care of the needs. But here's the bottom line, as Dave said, if you vote no on Measure H, when it comes 2 years, if it doesn't pass, we're going to have to probably cut in half the number of police hours. On top of that, the measure was designed to also help with fire abatement programs, the things that we really can't find any money in the budget for right now, but we all need to do. We all know we need to do. And finally, the things like groceries and medical supplies are not taxed with that. I know it's a hard sell, but I feel that the people that want this city to continue to grow and continue to be safe will make the hard decision to vote yes on Measure H. Thanks.
Okay, great. Let's keep on going here. And this would be a treasurer question for you, Mario. There have been concerns expressed about the last city audit. Can you clarify the issues involved?
Again, the biggest misunderstanding about it is exactly what an audit is. I've
We seem to have
I'm
you-
sorry. Okay. I hit the unmute and got it muted again. So basically, there's a huge misunderstanding about what an audit is. And I would start by saying years ago when I would go into the office, they were all excited at audit time and say, well, we passed an audit. That's not what an audit is or what's really happening. What an audit is actually a work product. It creates something. The item that it creates is a fair, representative, according to the accounting methods of the United States of America, representation of the monies that the city has spent over the course of a year. So it's a work product, and essentially an auditor that's a CPA who is a private person, who is an outside auditor, not a city. The city hires him and pays him, but the city does not have any authority over him. The outside auditor goes and looks through the entire books, looks through the entire accounting system of the city, and then signs off on it. I don't know of a year in 20 that we didn't have an audit and weren't able to successfully complete that program. If the auditor were to say that he was unable to do that, that would be not a performance of audit that the council would accept. So the bottom line is there's no missing money, and the auditor every year puts a list, like if you were a building inspector and you had Mario or Big Dave working for you, a list of items that could be improved on. And in that list were some recommendations. And those recommendations are to do with our lack of staff time, and some computer expenses, computer software expenses that we need to purchase. We've been talking to our financial officer, who is a very talented and hardworking individual, and trying to get him to a place where he can set aside the time to go through and work on those items. The auditor, when I talk to him, is extremely comfortable with both my finance manager and with the city of Dunsmuir's accounting. He does want to see improvements, and he lists these items because he wants to be able to walk in, do a clean audit, and walk out as fast as he can and collect his check. And that should be a really good thing for the city of Dunsmuir if he can do that. So it's not as though the auditor is declining the city of Dunsmuir's record keeping, bookkeeping, and or accounting methods. It's that he's asking for improvements, and we are more than obliged to do it. We are more than willing to do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this is a question back for the city council and with Big Dave. The airport operates in the red every year. What can be done to have it return money to the city instead of costing the city?
There's some good things. There's some good things about the airport coming our way. Bruce is put in charge of the airport, and that was probably one of the, as the mayor, was one of my bestest things I ever did, is put the right guy at the right place. We spent a little bit of money, and we got like $3 million, over $3 million. So we're getting new runways. The airport's coming around. There's things happening that I'm not aware of. I'm not on the airport committee. I know there's somebody that I was told there's somebody looking at lease a building that maybe be interested in putting it in a green waste. That would be, that's what the city needs, is we need some kind of green waste. I know that everybody says the airport always loses its money. I don't believe that that's going to be the truth in the near future. I'm going to let Bruce have this airport question because it's his
Okay.
baby.
All right, we can do that. Before we get there, I noticed that Cindy was kind of helping keep track of time, and I really appreciate that. So if you want to keep doing that, I appreciate that. Raising your little clock there. You can be the timekeeper. Okay, Bruce, we'll go to you with the same question. The airport operates in the red every year. What can be done to have it return money to the city instead of costing the city?
Thank you. First of all, the airport was basically disowned in a way as far as the federal government was concerned back in 2010. The council decided not to communicate with the FAA, not to look for any more grants, not to do anything. So for 5 years, essentially, the airport was just kind of up there, and they did some maintenance up there. And over the course of the last 10 years, the amount of money that has been in the red for the airport is around $75,000 right now. That $75,000 that has been raised over the course of 10 years, a deficit that has built up over the course of 10 years. And when you look at it fundamentally, the problem is that with nothing being done at the airport, it was falling into disrepair. The airport is a jewel for the city. First of all, the reason it is because the FAA sees it as being an emergency airport in case of a particular thing that happens here, where people flying to Weed would have to make an emergency landing at our airport. It supports fire. Whenever we have helicopters from the Forest Service up there, we get money for that. If they get 3 of them up there, we get to shut the airport down and get even more. So in case of a fire nearby here, that is there as an airport. The biggest thing, though, has to do with the 78 acres that lie to the east of it. When I got this particular project, when Dave asked me to be the chair of the committee, the airport committee, I realized that there was this land out there, and the general consensus of every single person you could talk to was that's 78 acres that the FAA owns, and you can't do anything there. It took me quite a bit of time, and we finally looked at the deed, and it turns out there's 2 separate parcels, the airport itself and then another parcel, which is to the east, 78 acres. Now, when you talk about can the airport bring in money? First of all, with a new runway and a new taxiway, that means that people flying from San Francisco, Sacramento, Portland will be able to land and not have their aircraft damaged by things flying off the old runway. It'll be a whole new runway. On top of that, when you look at the fact that we have an airport next to an interstate, and the only airport next to an interstate with ground around it that can be commercialized. Richard Dingus, working with somebody that he knew that was in the business of creating industrial parks, looked at it and figured that we could put in about 8 tilt-up warehouses that we could rent out. And their top estimate was we could bring in $3 million a year off that. $3 million a year on an increase. Now, that's one of the options, and that's not saying that is going to be the option. But here's the bottom line. Over the course of the last 5 years, the city has had to match grants with about $50,000. We put in $50,000 to match grants. What we got out of that is close to $3.8 million. Now, if anyone wants to come to me and say they could take $48,000 and turn it into 3.8, I'd like to see that. So the point is we're building. We've been working for the last 5 years to get the airport where we could be, it'd be a jewel, where we could bring people in that have enough money to buy a plane. Consider the average person driving through Dunsmuir in their car. Compare the average person flying into Dunsmuir. That person's going to have more money. They're going to want to come in and they're going to want to spend it in our town. The airport is the future of our city. And I think that I'm very comfortable in saying that in the very near future, we're going to see a big windfall from it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we'll move on. So this will be a question for the treasurer candidate, Mario. Do you see any sources of additional revenue for the city besides taxes?
Well, there has to be some realities placed on things, and God bless them, council is a bunch of big thinkers. But there are also some facts, and those facts are the realities. The city of Dunsmuir is shrinking at 4.2% a year. The city of Dunsmuir is presently 1,580 people. That's children, babies, elderly, and the rest of us. So the average household income is $50,000. We're at 23% poverty rate. Those numbers say things like, we can't afford to spend millions on putting in large buildings at the airport. It also says we get about $300,000 in property taxes. Our number one business in this town has ended up by default as tourism. We get $160,000 on TOT. We get $150,000 on our TUT, which is the tax we just passed. And we get about 120 on sales tax. So as you can see, if it wasn't for the tourists in this town, the city of Dunsmuir literally could not afford a police department, a city hall, a chief executive, the city manager, or the financial manager. It actually would not be able to afford to run. The positive news is the city of Dunsmuir, with some prudent work done by a couple city managers in a row, has created a situation in our score system where we're going to be paying off a final set of fines, not fines, but charges against our insurance based on lawsuits. That's going to come clear next year. That's going to save us a bit of money. At the same time, the city's been very good about lawsuits and not getting any more. And so we've been reaping some benefits. They give us positive sums of money from SCORE back if we have a low case of lawsuits for a couple of years. So those things are happening. The financial growth in the city, the sales tax, the TOT, and the TUT have been incredible. When the TUT originally passed, it was only going to be 30 to 40 grand. It is now like $150,000. It's a huge sum and has enabled the city to come out of debt. Last year's budget deficit was $100,000. We were able to end the year in the positive. With that had to do with numerous items, but one of those items was increase in sales tax, increase in TUT, and increase in TOT. Those are like positive things. The city is a financial engine, and that part of it is working. So there are positive elements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to another question for City Council, and this will be for Big Dave again. Let's see, what do we got going on here? Having a little bit of, there we go. Okay, we'll get Big Dave unmuted here. And what can the city do to support existing business and bring new business to Dunsmuir?
Well, I think it's important that we support all the businesses, and the Chamber of Commerce is our hand, our reaching out, the people that shakes the hands and tries to help new businesses come here, promote businesses. So I think the most important thing is that council supports the Chamber of Commerce, because that's where it really all starts.
Okay. And Bruce, I'll put that same question to you. What can the city do to support existing business and bring new business to Dunsmuir?
Well, thank you. I think Dave is on the right track there with the Chamber of Commerce. I think the Chamber is an organization that is critical to the city. And I think that one of the initiatives that the chamber was going to get involved in, and I think with COVID, it kind of fell through, but that was identifying areas within the city, within City Hall, that could be streamlined for new businesses coming in. And I think that that's one of the best ways to do that, is to join up with the chamber representing the businesses, and then sitting down with the people who actually have the policies and procedures and rules and everything before them, and say, what is the best way to make it easiest for people moving in to do that? And then on the other hand, I also think that it's a matter of the city supporting the chamber with the funds through the community development program. When I look at supporting the businesses in town, the best way to support them is to get visitors. As long as we have tourism as our almost only way of getting funding, the more people we get in, the better. And I think that the chamber over the years has represented the best marketing engine we have, next to Discover Siskiyou. So between those two areas, and then finally, there's a project that I'm involved in, which is supported by the Ford Family Institute, and that is something called Siskiyou Revitalization Network. And that's meetings that take place once a month with representatives from all the cities in the county. And we find ways to increase tourism, to come up with itineraries for people, families coming into the area. What can they do in a weekend? What are all the places? So that's one of the areas. And again, it's not so much the council setting policy as it's various members of the council working with their connections outside the council to help improve the businesses in our city. Thanks.
Okay, great. And Big Dave, you had a comment that you wanted to add to that?
I think it's also imperative that we work with people that are trying. Like, what came to mind was the travelers. I think it's important that the city, the planning commission, and the chamber conference work with somebody on a project like that, because I think that would be vital. That would be vital to our town. So I just wanted to throw that out there too, because that's a big project and people come to us with projects like that. I think it's important that city council, planning commission, and the chamber conference, everybody be on board with growth like that. Thank you for letting me come back in on that and responding.
Great. Okay. And so Mario, I'm going to give you virtually the same question. What ideas
I
do you have?
got lucky. I was gonna big you. I am so excited to answer this question. There's a couple things. The city of Dunsmuir has in the past used community development block grants, better known as economic development block grants, to proffer the city's businesses. And one of those aspects of that is the money is our federal taxes coming back to us. If we do it correctly, we're in a grant program controlled by the state, and we're allowed to put out a certain amount of monies to these people. Now, that first round, that grant process requires that the businesses hire someone, that they meet all these certain requirements. One of them is you can't afford to get traditional financing. The others are based on being able to hire people. Now, when the businesses in the town get these, they're loans, and that money comes back to the city's coffers, which I get to stare at. So that money becomes then the city's money to be reused. It's called a revolving loan fund, to be reused for businesses, except for there's a caveat. And the caveat is if it's less than 60 grand, the city can take it and throw it in its general fund and use it. The city's been doing that for the last 3-4 years, instead of making that available in more advantageous loans to individuals, a businessman in the city, because we've needed the money to balance budgets, which is one of the reasons why you want to balance your budget. You don't want to do things like that. So Mark's wife caught me years ago, and she said, you know, the worst thing about the hotel is the lack of retail in the commercial district. And I said, yes, it's a very difficult problem. Now, one of the many things that the city council can do is they can make an effort through the zoning commission to create live loft situations in some of these oversized, over utility, large buildings in Dunsmuir. By doing that, people will have the ability to do crafts and a place to live at an affordable rate. And what that will allow is walking traffic will have actually stores to look at and shop in. There's many, many things this council can do. There have been times I've been in front of council discussing this whole thing with the revolving loan fund. We just need to get council who does make decisions, not the treasurer, but to listen to other voices. And I know my good friend Dave, and I know Bruce Deutsch hates to hear this, but this council has been very stovepiped. And this council has not been willing to go to the people and listen. They've been more interested in a group think on certain items. Taxes is one of them. You got to have the people to pass the tax. It doesn't matter if council knows they need it. You got to have the people. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. We will move on. We're getting close, not to the end, but we're getting there. These have been great questions and responses. And this will be a question for Big Dave. And this is a very timely subject. What will you do to make the city more resistant to forest fires?
Well, that's a good question. Again, putting the right people in the right place at the right time. We have a disaster preparedness committee that they're off the hook. They're top notch. And I believe that anything that comes before council that has to do with fire suppression, fire safety, council should be behind. One thing that I'd like to push would be the cleanup days. We're hurting for the money, but somewhere we need to try and find out money to where we have the cleanup days like we used to have. People bring tires and mattresses and and that's just the stuff around your house. That's not talking about, cutting down the brush. I had to cut down some brush because I had let it get out of hand, and it was like, you're right, Dan, thank you for bringing that to my attention, and I did it that weekend. So, but I think that anything that comes to us with fire suppression, we should be behind, especially living here. It had a lot to do with my decision on the 4th of July. I sit on the board of directors for the state of California, League of California Cities. I represent Siskiyou, Shasta, Modoc, and Lassen County. Normally we have monthly meetings. Well, we were demanded to go on a field trip as a representative, and we toured the Paradise Fire. It's heart-wrenching. I just got goosebumps telling you that I saw it. There were 80-some people died. I left there telling myself, as long as I sit in this seat, whatever I can do, not never let that happen to us. When we got close, I was packed up and I was ready to take 30 people out of here that were handicapped. Bruce did a good job of rallying the troops, by the way, when we were in that disaster. I commend you, Bruce. You did a good job. We have an outstanding fire chief, Dan Padilla. He's the man. And we have a new police chief in town, I guess. Welcome to the table. But being behind anything that has to do with fire, this councilman would be behind. I just want everybody to know that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Bruce, the same question to you. What will you do to make the city more resistant to forest fires?
Thank you. To me, I think that the most important thing is to get the word out to all the citizens of all the things they need to do to be prepared. And as I mentioned before, part of the Dunsmuir Community Care Team has been working with Steve and Brian, and they've been creating a series of training that individual citizens can get a part of and can learn all the different things they have to do to be prepared. I mentioned before that the Measure H was also supposed to be part of the fire abatement efforts that the Disaster Preparedness Advisory Committee had recommended. And again, it's another area where if we have to live with the same budget we have going forward right now with the same revenue, we're not going to be able to be as aggressive in pursuing fire abatement. And by fire abatement, I mean, for instance, the effort that they put into to cut grass and et cetera along the interstate, since the interstate is one of the fastest ways for us to get hit if we were to get hit. So I think that the most important thing that we can do right now is to make sure that everyone gets trained and aware of what they should do and what to do in case of that call that would come out that we have to evacuate. And then on top of that, it's trying to get the extra green waste disposal. It's time right now with all the leaves all over the city. But again, on the budget we have right now, to come up with the cost to be able to call that all away is something that's beyond us. I guess I just have to finish up saying in everything we're looking at right now, we've been able to keep things together and we've been able to maintain what we've maintained. But going forward, a lot of it simply depends upon whether we have the flexibility in our budget to deal with the various things that come along. And that's my answer for that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And so, Mario, for you, we have a question of, do you see ways to get citizens involved in the budget process?
Oh my God. I am looking for anybody that has any interest in this. I'm always willing to sit down and talk. I am always willing to get copies of both the budget and the audits to people if they're so interested. It's important to remember, really important to remember, the budget is the city manager's budget. Council oversees it and council finalizes it, but it is the city manager's budget. And so pretty much 3/4 of the budget is all spent by the time he walks in the door and plops it in the financial committee. We're looking at what's left. Honestly, most years there's like $60,000-$70,000 worth of mad money to spend. And I do want to say, I didn't get a chance to say it earlier last time. We saw that original TUT start around 60 grand and grow to 150 grand. I mean, it's over a course of years, it's just really gone up. One of the faults I have with council is they assume when they go to the new tax that they're going to, instead of doing math and statistics, doing anything with some knowledge, they just assume that if we get 150 grand now, we're going to get 300 grand when we're done. It doesn't work that way. When people start seeing that the taxes are exorbitant in the city of Dunsmuir, you'll see a fall off of the original sales tax. You'll see a fall off on the TUT tax, and you'll see a fall off on the original tax. And we may be pretty much hosted. The other thing is this list of things they're going to do with the money. Me and Dave both know we're talking $200,000 for that sheriff's contract. And that is pretty much what any increase would go for. There isn't going to be money to run around and throw at a lot of different things. They're assuming that there's going to be that kind of proceeds off of the sales tax. And according to other cities and other statistical data, they're just wrong. People are not going to shop. They're going to shop. If you shop online, you're paying it. I've done a tax calculator. Anybody wants to see it? It's amazing what we'll be paying in taxes. You buy a new car, you're paying City of Dunsmuir 1.5% of that. If you buy a water heater, anything delivered in the City of Dunsmuir, anything you buy online. I did a budget number, and I'm going to tell you, it's a lot. So if we're going to pass a tax, let's make sure that we take our citizens into consideration and only pass what we need and for what we say we need it for. Okay. And let's do the right thing. Let's make sure the citizens are going to buy it before we try to pass it. None of that was done.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll kind of speed some of these up. We're near the end. This is for Big Dave. Can you comment on
I go
future?
first every time. Bruce is over there. Look at him. He's got something to say. Let him go first.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Well, let me get him unmuted here. Okay. There you go.
I need to say something about, thank you. I need to say something about the comments that Mr. Rubino has been making. He doesn't agree with the 5 members and what we've decided to do. He's been spending his time talking about the fact that we should have done this and we should have done that. And the 5 members of the city council that got together looked through all of this, and they had a survey that went out with the water bills. The reason that the number was so low is because all the different respondents the city has are so low. No matter what we would do, whether we have an in-person or whatever in-person, we would probably get a very minimum number of people that would even be involved. And so the point is that the city council recognized one thing, and that is we've got an increase in the police force coming up. We have an increase in the police force coming up. That is a fact. Mr. Rubino can talk about how he disagrees with the council, but all the talk about what we did or didn't do going up to it comes down to one fact. We're going to have an increase in police force, and if we don't have the taxes, we're going to have to cut our police force. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll take your question if you have one.
Okay, I'll give you the question. Can you comment on the future funding of the library and pool?
Yes. First of all, for the people that don't know, the city does not run either the library or the pool. I was kind of amazed that Mr. Toski thought that he should put on there, let's keep the pool open. The pool was closed because of COVID. The pool was closed because the board of directors for the rec center for the city said that it's not safe. The city council has absolutely, positively nothing to do with whether or not the pool is open. In fact, if anything, Big Dave last year as a council member went out and raised the money and raised the people that were needed for the pool. The library is the same way. The people that are raising money for the library are the friends of the library. There's talk about the fact that when this last TUT was put on, it was put on by the people who were wanting to get funding for the library and for the pool. But because it wasn't a 2/3 tax, the city is not only not required to, but is not supposed to dedicate any particular set of money. So what happens is every year we have a community development program fund. It's money that we can set aside for the different things that we want to do as a council to reach into the community and help improve it. That goes to things like the Community Resource Center. We, I think, put $11,000 into the Resource Center. It goes to the pool. We gave the pool, I'm not sure exactly what the percentage is, but in each year we look and see how much we can give. And there hasn't been any time where they said we're going to have to fail because you didn't give us enough support. So the point is that those 2 items, once again, come back to Measure H. Because at the end of the day, if we're facing a huge deficit, we're going to have to say, I'm sorry, Chamber of Commerce, we don't have any money for you. I'm sorry, library, we don't have any money. We have to pay the bills. We have to pay the police. And so when you're talking about those 2 programs, it's important to realize we give them some funding, but we don't run them. And if you want to have the pool and if you want to have the library supported, vote for Measure H. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Big Dave, would you like to further any comments on that question?
Yeah, Bruce is absolutely right. We don't own the pool. That was all Park and Recs. And yes, I spent days and days recruiting lifeguards to keep it open. I spent days and days collecting stuff for yard sales to sell, sat out there, sold it to keep that pool open. We would have kept the pool open again this year, but they told us to close it because of the COVID. That was the Park and Recreation's decision. Excuse me. The city owns the library, but we don't run it. I remember one time having a conversation with Marlo. He says, do you realize what would happen if we ran the city, that we'd have to make the lady that works there an employee? We don't have that. It's not in the budget. She is paid by the Friends of the Library. When we sit down and people come at the end of the year, everybody puts a request in and they want money, whether it's the Botanical Gardens or the Community Resource Center. These people rely on the city to give them the support money that they need to get through. And I would have to agree with the rest of my council when I'm saying it's a fact. If this measure does not pass, we will have half the police force in the near future that we have now. So I encourage everyone, please go vote. First, I want to encourage everybody to go vote. Just vote. But
Okay.
vote yeah.
Okay, and we'll go to Mario, and this is going to be your last question that I have here scheduled. Why do you feel you make a good treasurer? Yep. Can you hear me?
Well, good question. I want to say one thing about Mr. Deutsch. I want to correct something Dave said. The building is owned by the city of Dunsmuir. The city of Dunsmuir donates the maintenance of that building, the power, the water, utilities. We donate that to Friends of the Library. The Friends of the Library owns the operation of that building. I believe the county owns the books, and it's a county system. It needs to be understood. We do not own the pool. The pool property is owned by Parks and Rec. And Mr. Deutsch is correct. We do not own the library. Now, being a good treasurer is that you got to have a little heart and you have to have a little obstinance. I was reading about treasurers, and there are two options. You know, I could work for council, or I can be a publicly voted in treasurer. And that's typical in that what they're looking for, the citizens are looking for, is an unbiased and somebody that would hold council to account. So the key is, as much as Mr. Deutsch can't appreciate some of the points I make, it does wear on him and things slowly change. The airport is projected to make $500 this year. And Mr. Deutsch could take credit for it, but I can take credit for it too. I've pushed on that. I'm looking forward to the day we get a real business plan with people that are actually people that have interest in that airport put together. That's what the city needed 10 years ago before it moved forward. It's what it needs now. So being a good treasurer is someone willing to invest the time, which is so hard to find in the city of Dunsmuir. I'm going to tell you what Mr. Deutsch and Big Dave does takes a lot of time and a lot of reading. And it can be so inconvenient at times to be a councilman in the city of Dunsmuir. It's a lot of work. I appreciate both their efforts. I think that the treasurer should be independent. I think the treasurer should be someone with fairly good communication skills. I kind of feel I've let down council and the people in that regard. I wish I was better. To that point, I can't seem to get council to allow me more than 3 minutes, and I hardly get that uninterrupted. So I get a little frustrated with it. I have come up with some new plans on dealing with getting the information to council that I feel that they should need. The city manager and the financial manager are great. They're wonderful to work with. The auditor is wonderful to work with. And I have great interest in watching the city of Dunsmuir over 20 years, having sat on council myself and unwilling to take up a seat. I love the job of treasurer. It keeps me involved in this community and I get to look at the numbers. Did you hold that up? I didn't see it, Cindy. Am I over?
Yeah, you're not.
Oh, okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
You're over.
You're done easily.
That's why I make a good treasurer.
All
I
right,
didn't see
great.
you, Cindy.
Well, thank you. And that concludes it for our treasurer's questions. We have 3 more for the city council candidates. And I'll start right here with Bruce. And Bruce, do you feel the police services are adequate and what should be done to improve them?
They're as adequate as we can have right now. One of the things that I'm really appreciative of is the level of caring that we have with the police force. I've had a chance to work, I've been on supporting the Neighborhood Watch Committee. And so I've had a chance to work with each of the 3 sergeants that we've had over the last several years. And I believe that we've been really blessed to have the level of caring and the level of professionalism that we get out of the police force. I wish we could have more. I wish that we could have a level that was what it was before. And that is, again, measure H. But the big point, though, is that even with the reduction we had to take, they were willing to work with Matthew Bryan, our vice mayor, and Big Dave Keisler on a committee to talk about how we can work things out. Both of them have given us a level of support that even though the numbers officially may be a little different, we're actually getting some of the same level of support because they're willing to put in the extra hours because they care. And so I think the only thing we have to recognize with the police force is that we're on the right track. I know people are concerned about the number of drug houses around, and I know that as best they can, they're constantly working that. But I think that the key is we have to be able to afford what we want. If we want a safe city, that takes money. It doesn't something that just comes because we want it. And so I look forward to continuing to work with the police department. We have Sergeant Ben Wetstein right now, who is fantastic. And I hope we can continue to support the number of hours that we need. Thanks.
Okay, good. And Big Dave, I'll give you the same question. Do you feel that the police services are adequate and what should be done to improve them?
Again, I want to echo everything Bruce said. I've worked with the 3 sergeants and the neighborhood watch. I resurrected it back in the day. And it was nice to see them come around, take their time every Wednesday or Monday, whatever day it was, and come down there and bring information for us. They brought us signs, we have shirts. Neighborhood watch is a good thing. And if you're not on the neighborhood watch, I suggest that you get on board with it. It's a way that we protect ourselves and our neighborhoods. As Bruce said, Ben Wetstein is our acting interim police chief, and he's done a fantastic job. The communications between him, our city manager, who's done a fantastic job, by the way, and council has just been outstanding. We get reports at every meeting. He's available at a phone call for any questions that I may have or concerns. And again, we're getting what we pay for. They take it upon themselves to give us more than we're actually getting. And trust me, we're getting more than they're paying for. They're giving us a lot more. They're taking very good care of us. And Measure H is very important if we want to continue that support. We need to pass this tax. So again, I urge every citizen who's concerned of safety and the ongoing police force that we have in this town to vote yes on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, and this will be a question for Bruce. What kinds of community building groups or activities have you been involved with in Dunsmuir?
Thank you. We've had several efforts to bring together people to develop a vision for the future. A lot of organizations, and this is one, our city council wants to be able to identify what the priorities are of the people, and then to factor that in when we make decisions on financing. The real challenge with that is that anytime you try and do that, you're going to end up with a handful of respondents. It's just part of living in a small community like this. So in the past, I was part of a process that came up with a visioning statement. It was 3 sentences long and it was pretty, but it really didn't do what you really want to do, which is to have it be kind of a sense that everybody in the community shares that vision and it's something that moves them forward. One of the things I was trying to do at the beginning of this year and COVID hit was something that Aetna did a few years back. And what they did is, with the support of the Ford Family Institute, with funding from them and support from them, they put on an event called Building Aetna's Future. And city about the same size, a little smaller than us, on one Saturday, they had over 100 people sitting in a room in a building for the whole day, going through various exercises, sharing with people at their table, and really coming up with a sense of what is it that we want our community to be going forward? What are the values we want to have? And I'm looking at trying to do that again, because again, the council really does want to have our priorities based on a sense of what the people want. It's the challenge of coming up with an effective way of gathering that information. And so I am going to try sometime maybe in the spring of putting on a Building Dunsmuir's Future event and hope to get a large number of people involved in that and to bring this community together. The real challenge we have is that we have so many, not just short-term rentals, but also vacation homes. So in a way, we have a community that's Swiss cheese. And it takes an extra effort in that situation to really come around and have a common vision of who we are, what we share, where we want to go. And so that's what I hope to be able to do in the spring. And that's my answer to that question.
Do I just take over?
Go ahead, Dave. I guess Mark dropped out.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's going to ask me the same question, so I'm going to roll with it. I've been part of the planning commission. I mean, part of the visioning statement thing since we had that a few years ago, where the whole community came together and we took their ideas, and that helped create our mission statement. I remember I brought together as a mayor, I brought together the historical district members, Ron McLeod. I had them sit down with the planning commission and the council. I think we need to do that again. That was very productive, but somewhere along the lines, code enforcement, rules, regulations became an issue. As far as organizations go, I'm proud to say that I'm a Rotarian, and there's pretty much no function that happens that the Rotary or I'm not a part of. As far as building our community, when I was a mayor, I was at almost every football game. I go to the DARE programs and watch the kids graduate. I think that a council member should be involved. I resurrected the bus stops. I cleaned the bus stops. These are things that council members could do. Come down and help me rake at the cemetery. These are things that council members could do. Not worrying about closing a pool that I have no control over. So, boy, that felt like 3 minutes.
Okay. It looks like Mark dropped out, and so therefore I'm going to go ahead and take over. I'll do the best I can. We have one question left, and we will go to Bruce with that question. Why do you feel like you will make a good city councilor, Bruce?
Thank you, Cindy. One of the things to realize about a city council in the form we have is that for anything to get done, you have to have the support of the other members. To get something on an agenda, you have to have 2 people. To get something passed, you have to have 3 people. And what that turns out is that you have to come to the point, each person, if you're going to be an effective city council member, of recognizing one simple fact: you're one of 5. You don't have any control over anything. Even the mayor can't make a decision on her own. You're one of 5. And so what that means is that you have to be able to work with the other people. You have to be able to, as a member of a basketball team, take your particular skills and make it a strength for the overall team. And from that standpoint, I think my career in the Navy and my career in the civilian world both have given me the ability to listen, to suggest other ways, to work as a team member to help come up with a solution. On top of that, because of that very same experience, I'm the only member on the council right now that has extensive experience with the federal government. That experience has led me to be able to be a key player in bringing in over $15 million in low-cost loans and grants. And it's because of the recognition that in order to play the game with the federal government, you have to get in sync with them. You have to provide them what they want, and you work it out. And in the end, like I said, I was able to take $48,000 from our budget and turn it into $3.8 million for the airport. And then for the water system, we were able to get $12 million there. And it was because we had the rates in place that made us eligible for the federal government to come in and give us $12 million. In both of those circumstances, if there wasn't a sense that the federal government was somebody to work with, and you knew how to work with them, and you knew to be patient, and you knew where to press the buttons, I don't think either one of those would have gone through, and we wouldn't have had a water system in place. The grant that we're going to be working on right now to replace water mains that are over 75 years old, and we wouldn't have been able to have the new runway and the new taxiway at the airport. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay, I will pose the same question to you, Big Dave. Why do you feel that you would make a good city councilor?
First of all, I would like to thank the chamber for putting this event on and taking. I've been on council for 8 years. We've had some very, 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 very difficult times. I led a meeting that lasted till 12:35 a.m. at the community building over dogs pooping in the park before. Somebody said, if you're going to be a good counselor, you got to have wherewithal. You got to be able to wherewithal it. It's all you're going through. I've gone through a little bit. I have the wherewithal. I have the fortitude. And what a lot of people think is, some people think we get paid for this. We don't get paid. It costs us $200 just to say, I want to run again. Our cell phone bills, because we're always on the phone with people. I've always been available. People come to my house. I've never turned anybody away that wanted to talk. I've brought issues from everything. One of the issues is we all wanted code enforcement officer, and now that we got one, everybody's upset about how he's doing the job. That was a big controversy for a long time, and I don't know if it still is, but you have to be able to take the people's concerns and create a way to get a resolve. So that's what I've tried to do. I think that I've proven myself. I encourage everyone, like I said earlier, please go out and vote. Just doesn't matter who you vote for. I'd appreciate your vote. I'd appreciate it if you voted for Bruce, and I would appreciate it if you voted for Marlo Rubino as our treasurer. I think we're part of a great team, and I look forward to continue doing Dunsmuir's business. Thank you.
Okay, candidates, thank you for being here. I'm going to give each of you one last chance to say anything further you would like to before we call this meeting to an end. So I will start with you, Mario. Is there anything further you would like to add?
He's muted.
Oh, second. I don't know how to do that. Let's see. There you go.
There you are.
There you go.
Am I on? Oh,
I told you I didn't know what I was doing.
You did fine.
Yeah.
Dunsmuir is a very special town to all of us. We care deeply about it. I plan to live the next few years of my life here, and it is a very small city, 1,500. It is my personal belief that we need to make the effort to grow the city to a point where it's self-sustaining. It is contentious being such a small number of people. But I'm going to tell you, I walk up and down the streets of the city. There's people that agree with me and disagree with me, and I respect all of them. And I treat all of them with the respect they should deserve. I am Italian. I kind of get a little aggressive. People think I'm being aggressive. It's not that I don't accept different points of view. I am pretty adamant about my own because I've been following the numbers in the city of Dunsmuir for it's like 12 years now. And, you know, there's things that we can do and we need to make the effort. And it's obviously always the same people in this town that have been pushing. I'm pushing. I do support Dave and I do support Bruce and I do support the Chamber of Commerce. And I know that we all have the best intentions for this city. I really think we can get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Bruce, did you have anything further you wanted to add?
He's muted.
Okay. Let's see. I think,
Okay.
yeah.
There I am. What I'd like to say is, first of all, thank you to the Chamber and to Cindy and Mark and everybody else that put it on. I know Will was really involved in this. I think it gave us a chance to talk to the people and share. I guess the biggest thing that I would like to close with is a simple idea. I think the most important measure of a council member or a treasurer is one word: care. Whether they care, how much do they care? Do they care enough, for instance, to call the city and find out if your claims of $158,000 deficits and $869,000? Do you care enough to call the finance director or the city manager to ask them, is that true? If they would have found out none of it's true. And I did find out from both the finance director and the city manager that nobody from the other side has made any effort to talk with City Hall. Nobody's made any effort to find out what the damage would be if Measure H were not to pass. And what that comes down to is the fact that there are people out there that want Measure H to fail because they want to cut into the number of police hours. That is a fact. And the process we're going through right now, on one hand, is to identify who have the best skills, who have the best ideas. And on the other hand, you have three candidates that represent an attack on the city. And I just want to say that if you look at what the city council has been doing over the last 5 years, it's been growing, it's been learning how to work together, it's been making tough decisions, it's hiring some incredible people, and situating ourselves right now to really be able to grow. And I think what it comes down to, again, is when you look at Dave, Mario, or myself, you can look at, by the very fact of the number of hours we all put in with no compensation other than satisfaction, the number of hours we put in to support our community. And if you want a city council person that is going to be able to work with the others, put aside their ego, become one of five, and really put the city first, ask yourself, have you seen the other candidates out there caring? Have you seen any indication that they're there because they want to put in the hours going forward, that we want to put in hundreds of hours or whatever it takes to make the city better? I think that if you vote for Dave or Mario or myself, you're voting for three people that care deeply about this community and are willing to put in all the effort and all the strain and all the tension and conflict that comes with it because we care. We care. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Big Dave, did you have anything further you wanted to add before we close this?
I just wanted to emphasize on what Bruce said. We care. We care a lot. We care. We put our time, our heart, and our souls in this job. And my thing is when I'm driving down the street and all the kids are waving, hi, Big Dave, hi, Big Dave. I mean, I love doing what I do, everything I do about it. I hope that, I hope that you'll vote for me. I encourage you to vote for the other two candidates. Mark, you did a great job tonight. People, like I said earlier, go vote, and please vote yes on this measure for the tax, because it's imperative to the safety of our town. I appreciate
Okay.
your support.
Thank you, Big Dave. Thank you, all three of you candidates, for joining us at this political forum. I appreciate your time.